Ladies and gentlemen, as we navigate the complexities of our lives, there are moments when we must confront the truth within ourselves. Carl Jung once said, "Your visions will become clear only when you can look into your own heart." It is through this self-exploration, through understanding our own shadows and light, that we learn to recognize when the relationships around us no longer serve our well-being. We are often surrounded by voices that influence us, some guiding us with love and wisdom, while others may push us toward compromise and silence. Jung teaches us that our relationships should reflect our true selves, not force us into shapes that are not ours. Today, I ask you to reflect on your own relationships. Are they pushing you toward growth, or are they demanding you to shrink, to conform, to fit into someone else's mold? Let us explore the types of relationships that take more than they give, and how we can protect our own growth in a world that often asks for our compromise. There's something deeply unsettling about the kind of person who consistently asks for your time but treats it like it's disposable. You know the type. The ones who call only when they need something, who show up in your life unannounced, not because they care about you, but because you've become convenient. These are the people who assume your time is theirs to use, and they do so without a second thought. They don't ask how you're doing. They don't check if you're overwhelmed or on the brink. They just assume you'll be there, and for a while maybe you are, out of kindness, out of habit, out of guilt. But eventually, if you pay attention, you start to realize this isn't about connection, it's about consumption. People like this don't see your time as a sacred part of your life. They see it as something to extract, something they can dip into whenever they want, without giving back. And the worst part, they do it so casually, so subtly, that you start questioning yourself. Am I being selfish? Am I overreacting? Shouldn't I just help? And that's exactly how they get in. They count on your hesitation, on your good nature, on your fear of being the one who says no. But let's be honest, time is not just hours on a clock. It's energy, it's attention, it's presence. It's the one thing you can never get back once it's spent. You can lose money and make it again. You can lose things and replace them. But time, once it's gone, it's gone. And people who truly value you, who genuinely respect you, understand that. They check in. They ask if you have a moment. They listen for your tone. They notice if you're drained. And most importantly, they don't punish you for putting your time where it needs to go. There's a quiet kind of manipulation that exists in people who always need you but are never there for you. They'll phrase it like, "I just need 5 minutes," or "it'll be quick," or worse, "you're the only one I can count on." And those words sound harmless until you realize that 5 minutes becomes an hour, and quick becomes constant, and being the only one becomes your full-time job. Slowly, your schedule becomes their crisis center. Your plans get put on hold, your goals get pushed back, and suddenly, you're living someone else's life more than your own. And this is important. It's not about being unavailable to people you love. Of course not. Life is about relationships, about showing up, about supporting each other. But support should never feel like suffocation. There's a difference between being there for someone and being consumed by them. And there's a difference between helping and being harvested. Know that difference, because if you don't, you'll give away your days to people who never even asked how you were doing, while you gave them everything. The truth is, some people have no intention of ever giving back the time they take from you. They won't ask how your day was after you've spent hours helping them through theirs. They won't check in when you're quiet, even though you've sat with them in their silence. These are the people who, deep down, believe their needs matter more than yours, and they act accordingly. And maybe they don't say it out loud, but they don't have to. Their actions speak for them. They're late, but expect you to wait. They cancel, but guilt-trip you when you do. They forget your plans, but expect you to remember theirs. And when you finally pull back, even just a little, they make you the villain. Suddenly, you're not the same. you're distant or cold, but the truth is, you just stopped letting them live on your time without rent. Let that be your turning point. Not out of anger, but out of clarity. You don't need to argue. You don't need to explain. Just reclaim your time. Because not everyone deserves it, and not everyone will respect it once they have it. Your time should go to people who recognize its value, who meet you with presence, not just demands, who show up for you the way you show up for them. And if someone can't do that, they've shown you all you need to know. Walk away from those who treat your time like an open tab they never planned to pay. Loyalty is one of those words that people love to use, especially when they need something from you. You'll notice it's often spoken with pride. I value loyalty above all else. But for some, what they really mean is, I want your loyalty even if I can't offer you mine. And that's where things start to get dangerous. Because loyalty, when it's real, is sacred. It's earned through time, trust, and mutual effort. But when someone demands it without giving it, it becomes a trap. It turns into a leash they tighten whenever you start to drift away from their control. You should be wary of anyone who expects your loyalty as a given. Just because you've known them a long time, just because you're related, just because you once shared something real. Loyalty doesn't come with titles or timestamps. It's not automatic. It's alive. And like anything alive, it has to be nourished on both sides. But people who use loyalty as a tool to keep you close usually don't care about what you're giving. They care about what they're getting. And they'll disguise that with emotional language, with guilt, with nostalgia. They'll remind you of everything you've been through together, not because they want to build something healthy with you, but because they want to make it harder for you to leave. And maybe for a while you stay, because you remember the good moments, because you feel responsible, because they've convinced you that leaving would make you disloyal. But here's the truth they'll never tell you. Loyalty should never cost you your peace, your self-respect, or your growth. If someone only sees you as loyal when you're silent, when you're small, when you're always available, then what they want isn't loyalty, it's obedience. There's something very revealing about how people behave when you need them the way they've needed you. Try it. Flip the roles. Call on them when you're struggling. Set a boundary. Ask them to support you the way you've supported them. Watch what happens. You'll learn a lot. You'll learn that some people only show up when it benefits them, that their version of loyalty is entirely self-serving, that they disappear when your problems don't revolve around their needs. And yet, if you step away, if you finally choose yourself, suddenly, you're the one who's changed. People like that will say, after everything I've done for you, and you'll pause, confused, wondering what they're referring to. Because in reality, it was you who did the heavy lifting. You who picked up the late-night calls. You who forgave the lies. You who stood by them when it hurt. But now that you're asking for something different, for space, for honesty, for reciprocity, they act like you've betrayed them. And this is where you need clarity. Loyalty isn't about blind allegiance, it's about alignment. You don't owe anyone eternal loyalty just because you once cared for them, especially not if staying loyal means betraying yourself. Loyalty without mutual respect is slavery. It turns love into duty. It turns friendship into sacrifice. And that kind of loyalty, the one that costs you your sanity, is too expensive. What's wild is that the people who demand loyalty the most are often the ones least capable of giving it. They'll talk about loyalty while cheating on their partners, while gossiping about their friends, while abandoning people in crisis. And yet, they'll expect you to stick around through everything, as if loyalty means tolerating their worst without asking for their best. So what do? You step back. You take inventory. You ask yourself the hard questions. Is this loyalty mutual? Does this person show up for me the way I show up for them? Or am I loyal to an image, to a memory, to a promise that never became reality? And if the answers are hard to face, face them anyway, because staying loyal to someone who only values your loyalty when it benefits them is a slow erosion of who you are. It's not disloyal to outgrow people who refuse to grow with you. It's not betrayal to protect your well-being from those who only call you loyal when you're useful. Your loyalty is a gift, not a cage. And anyone who truly deserves it will never treat it like a leash. So if someone asks for your loyalty but disappears when you need theirs, let them go. There's a particular kind of danger that comes from people who ask you to stay silent about the things they've done wrong. Not just once, not in passing, but habitually, deliberately, and without remorse. These are the people who make their messes and then expect you to be the one cleaning them up, all while pretending nothing ever happened. And not only do they want your silence, they demand your loyalty through it. They want your complicity, your quiet agreement, and if you say no, suddenly you're the problem. They'll tell you it's between us, or don't make a big deal, or you're overreacting. But deep down, they know exactly what they're doing. They're not asking you to keep a secret. They're asking you to suppress your integrity. They're asking you to carry the weight of their actions so they don't have to face the consequences. And that's not just unfair, it's corrosive. Because the longer you protect someone from the truth of their behavior, the more damage it does to you, to them, to everything around you. It always starts small. A little lie they want you to cover for, a small mistake they ask you not to mention, a story they twist and expect you to co-sign. And at first, maybe you go along with it. Because you care, because you want to keep the peace, because you think it's just this once. But it's never just once. Once they know you'll hold their secrets, they'll keep giving you more of them. And you'll start to notice that their problems become yours, their guilt becomes your silence. And your sense of right and wrong starts to blur because now you're tangled up in their consequences. People who ask you to stay silent about their wrongdoings aren't asking for support, they're asking for submission. They're not trusting you, they're using you. And the longer you go along with it, the more it drains you. You start to feel like you're walking around with a weight on your chest, a knot in your stomach, a whisper in your mind that says, "This isn't who I am." And that voice is important. That voice is your truth trying to breathe. Don't silence it for someone who wouldn't even flinch at sacrificing your peace to protect their image. The worst part is that these people often know the kind of person you are. They know you're loyal, that you value relationships, that you don't like conflict. They play on that. They rely on it. And that's why it's so hard to pull away. Because they're not just asking you to protect their secret, they're tying it to your identity. They're making it personal. I thought you had my back. I thought you were different. They frame your honesty as betrayal, your boundaries as disloyalty. But let's be clear. Speaking the truth about someone's behavior doesn't make you disloyal. It makes you honest. And protecting someone's reputation at the expense of your conscience isn't loyalty. It's self-betrayal. Silence in the face of wrongdoing isn't strength, it's surrender. And when someone asks you to stay silent about something they know is wrong, what they're really saying is, "I'm more important than your values," and that's a red flag you should never ignore. Sometimes people think they can manage this, keep quiet, keep the peace, and just move forward. But secrets have weight. They sit in your chest, they echo in your mind. They leak out in ways you can't control. And the more you protect someone from the truth, the less they feel the need to change. Why would they? If their mistakes come with no consequences, no accountability, and no resistance, they'll just repeat them and expect you to be quiet again. You deserve relationships where you don't have to betray your conscience to keep the connection alive, where honesty isn't punished, where integrity is welcomed. You shouldn't have to choose between being true to yourself and staying close to someone. If someone puts you in that position, they are not safe to trust, no matter how long you've known them, no matter what you've been through together. It takes strength to walk away from someone who hands you a secret and says, "Hold this, but never speak of it." Because What they're really saying is, I'm not ready to face myself, so I'm asking you to carry the burden instead. And that is never your job. If someone asks for your silence while doing wrong, they've already shown you who they are. Believe them and walk away. There's something subtle, almost invisible at first, about people who constantly ask for your resources, your money, your connections, your help, without ever offering anything in return. They rarely come across as demanding. They'll wrap their needs in stories, in charm, in crisis. They won't always say, "Give me this," but their behavior will make it clear. They expect you to show up again and again and again. And maybe you do, because you're generous, because you want to be kind, because you've always believed that if you can help, you should. But here's where it gets tricky. Some people aren't just receiving your generosity. They're counting on it. They've studied it. They know exactly how to lean just enough, cry just enough, praise you just enough, so you'll keep giving while they keep taking. And it's not always malicious. Sometimes it's learned behavior. Sometimes it's entitlement that's gone unchecked. But regardless of the reason, the result is the same. You end up depleted. What they're really doing is turning your kindness into currency, something they spend freely without ever thinking about how it costs you. And you'll start to feel it. You'll feel it in your bank account, in your calendar, in your energy levels. You'll start noticing how you're always the one covering the check, making the introduction, fixing the mess. And then, when you finally need something, they're nowhere. Suddenly, they're too busy. Or they don't have it. Or worse, they act confused, as if your need is inconvenient or even ungrateful, considering how much they've let you give. You'll recognize them by the way they frame your generosity as obligation. They don't say thank you, they say, "I knew you'd come through," or "You're always the reliable one," or "You've got more than I do, so it's only fair." And just like that, they turn your giving nature into their personal safety net. And you start to feel like an ATM with a soul, something to be accessed, not appreciated. But real relationships, healthy relationships, don't work like that. They're built on reciprocity, not transactions. They carry an unspoken understanding. I see you giving, and I want to give back, not because I owe you, but because I care. Because your effort touches something in me that wants to meet you there. But people who use you never think about meeting you there. They think about what more they can get, how else you can help, what else you can provide. And if you stop, the kindness you gave will vanish from their memory. They'll rewrite the story. Suddenly, you never did enough. This is where you need to draw a line, because generosity, when it's one-sided, becomes exploitation. It's not selfish to expect balance. It's not rude to want appreciation. You are not a bad person for wanting the energy you give to come back to you. And anyone who makes you feel guilty for asking, for slowing down, for saying no, for setting limits, is showing you their real view of you, not as an equal, but as a resource, a provider, a background character in the story of their life. It's also worth noticing how these people react when you redirect your resources, not even away from them, just toward yourself. If you invest in your own dreams, your own rest, your own growth, do they support you? Or do they make it about themselves? Do they sulk? Do they imply you've become selfish? Because those reactions will tell you everything. People who only value what they get from you will always feel threatened when you start pouring into yourself. And that's when you need to decide who in your life sees your worth even when you're not giving them anything. Who sticks around when you have nothing to offer but your presence? That's who deserves your resources. Not the ones who measure your value by how useful you are, but the ones who honor the person behind the help, the heart behind the support. It's not that giving is wrong, giving is beautiful. It's one of the highest expressions of love, of connection, of humanity. but it must be rooted in truth. And the truth is, if someone constantly asks you to give while never giving in return, they don't love you. They love what they get from you. Protect your resources. Protect your time, your energy, your finances, your attention. Because once you start saying no to those who only take, you make room for those who give back without being asked. There's a moment, quiet but unforgettable, when someone asks you to be someone you're not. Not directly, of course. Rarely does it sound like a command. It comes as a suggestion, a subtle nudge, a carefully placed comment meant to reshape you. You'd be more successful if you were just a little less intense. You'd fit in better if you didn't talk about that. You'd be easier to love if you'd just relax a little more. And before you realize it, you're editing yourself, softening your edges, dimming your light, hiding pieces of who you are just to make others more comfortable. People like that don't ask for your growth. They ask for your erasure. They're not interested in who you truly are. They're interested in who you could be if you fit their image better. And it's easy to fall into the trap, especially if you've spent your life being the peacemaker, the reliable one, the one who adjusts. Because at first, it doesn't feel like a big deal. It feels like compromise, like keeping the peace, like being flexible. But here's the truth. When someone continually asks you to abandon parts of yourself to make the relationship work, it stops being a relationship and starts becoming performance. You'll notice it in the little ways first. You laugh a little quieter. You speak a little less. You hold back your opinions, your creativity, your feelings. Not because you want to, but because you've learned that when you're fully yourself, it unsettles them. Maybe they roll their eyes. Maybe they mock it. Maybe they go quiet and cold. And so, little by little, you shrink. Not because you lack power, but because someone convinced you that your power was inconvenient. And let's be clear, asking someone to grow, to heal, to evolve, that's healthy, that's love. But asking someone to mute their spirit, to shapeshift, just to maintain peace, that's manipulation. When someone asks you to become less so they can feel like more, they're not helping you. The irony is that the very parts of you they ask you to tone down are often the most alive parts of you. Your sensitivity, your fire, your truth. These are not flaws. They're evidence of your aliveness. But to someone who can't hold space for that, those traits feel like threats. And instead of expanding themselves to meet you, they ask you to shrink to fit inside their comfort zone. It doesn't just happen in romantic relationships either. It happens in friendships, families, even workplaces. You bring your full self, your ideas, your presence, and someone pushes back. Not because you're wrong, but because you're different. Because your honesty is too raw, your boundaries too unfamiliar, your confidence too bold. And if you're not careful, you'll start to believe them. You'll start to question whether you're too much, when in fact, you've just been standing in rooms too small. You are not here to be easy to digest. You're not here to round off your corners or silence your truth just to stay connected to people who only know how to love half of you. If someone asks you to dim, to distort, to dilute yourself for their approval, they're not asking for connection, they're asking for control. And no matter how charming they are, how persuasive, how familiar, that's not love. That's ego management. The most dangerous part? Over time, you start to forget what your real self even looks like. You become so used to adjusting, filtering, censoring, that one day you look in the mirror and barely recognize the person staring back. And that moment, that disconnection from your own identity, is the true cost of staying too long with people who require your silence in exchange for affection. But it's never too late to remember, to reclaim, to return. The real you. The one who laughs loudly, who loves deeply, who questions things, who feels everything. is not a problem to fix. That version of you is not too much. That version is the truth. And anyone who tries to convince you otherwise is afraid of what they don't understand. So when someone asks you to be someone else just to stay close to them, someone quieter, smaller, easier to manage, understand this: they are not choosing you. They are choosing their comfort over your truth. And no matter how softly they ask, the answer should be clear. If someone asks you to change who you are to stay in their life, walk away, because your authenticity is not negotiable. There is a kind of relationship that becomes suffocating over time, one where the person seems to only value you when you're at your lowest. They thrive on your vulnerabilities. They lean on you when you're down, but when you begin to heal, when you start to rise above your struggles, they start pulling back. It's not that they don't care about you, but their care comes with a hidden condition. They need you to stay small in their eyes, because that's when they feel needed. That's when they feel in control. At first, it's hard to recognize. These people don't usually show up with malice. They show up with compassion, with a listening ear, with promises to always be there for you. They are present when you're going through something difficult, comforting you when things feel chaotic, reassuring you when your world is spinning. You might even think, this person is a blessing. They're the one who's been there for me when no one else was. And in a sense, they are. But here's the thing. They're only there because your struggle keeps them close. They love to be needed, but more importantly, they love the power that comes from being the one to fix things. When you're struggling, they're in their element. They get to be the hero. They get to take charge, to step in, to be the one to make everything better. And there's nothing wrong with supporting someone during hard times, of course. We all need support, but when the support feels one-sided, when the person offering it doesn't seem to respect your healing process, that's when it starts to turn. When you begin to stand on your own again, when you start making progress, suddenly their tone shifts. They become distant. They become less involved. They start to distance themselves, maybe not in obvious ways, but in subtle shifts. Their care becomes conditional, and you're left feeling like a failure for getting better without them. This is the insidious part of relationships that are built on someone else's need for you to stay in crisis. Because when you get better, they feel irrelevant. They stop getting to play the savior. And that's when they'll pull away, creating distance, as if your healing was a betrayal. And maybe you'll feel guilty for not needing them as much anymore, but this is where the truth lies. You don't owe anyone the role of your rescuer. You don't owe anyone your struggle as a way to keep them engaged in your life. The fact is, people who only value you when you're struggling aren't invested in your well-being. They're invested in their position in your life. They thrive on the narrative of your suffering because that's when they get to feel important. But once you start healing, once you start finding your own strength, they will find reasons to become less available. You may start to notice them turning the conversation back to their problems, making your progress seem less significant. You may hear comments like, "It's nice that you're doing better, but don't forget how you used to be." Or worse, they may begin to criticize you for changing, implying that your healing has made you unrecognizable, ungrateful, or unworthy of their time. But here's the truth. Your healing is not a betrayal. Your strength is not a rejection of them. Your growth is a reflection of your power, of your ability to rise, to rebuild, to create a life that no longer revolves around pain. It's a victory, not just for you, but for anyone who genuinely loves you. Because real love doesn't need you to stay broken in order to feel important. Real love sees you in all your glory, in all your progress, and celebrates your ability to stand on your own 2 feet. You have to be honest with yourself about this kind of dynamic. If someone consistently only shows up for you when you're at your lowest, If they pull away when you start to stand tall, then it's time to assess the real nature of that relationship. Because love and care are not about keeping someone small. They're about uplifting them. They're about cheering for their victories. And if someone doesn't want you to get better, if they need you to stay dependent on them in order to feel valued, they are not truly supporting you. They are using your struggles to fulfill their own needs. You deserve people who celebrate your successes, who are happy for your progress, who encourage your independence rather than cling to your pain. You don't need to apologize for healing. You don't need to feel guilty for becoming the person you were always meant to be. Anyone who cannot handle your growth is not worthy of your time or energy. So, don't let anyone hold you back. Don't let anyone keep you small just to make themselves feel important. Your healing is your gift to yourself. And anyone who truly cares about you will stand beside you, not because they need you to stay stuck, but because they want to see you thrive. And if they can't, it's time to walk away. Carl Jung, who said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." We must not allow others to shape us in ways that betray our true essence. The relationships we form should challenge us to grow, to become more of who we are meant to be, not less. As we move forward, let us choose relationships that honor our authenticity, that support our growth, and that never ask us to shrink for the comfort of others. And know that the most profound love is the one that helps us rise, not the one that keeps us small. Thank you.